A view of the countryside in the heart of Europe, quiet and peaceful. For nearly 40 years, a common sight in Western Europe, where peace has been something we almost take for granted. This scene could suddenly change to something like this. Such an attack can only be repulsed by keeping up our guard, even in peacetime. Sixteen nations have committed themselves to the joint defense of Europe by creating the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. They've entered into this commitment on the basis of a determination to defend their shared common values. But such a multinational alliance faces many problems arising from differences in language, equipment, and tactical planning. In times of crisis, speed and mobility are of crucial importance. The mobilization of such a multinational force has to be rehearsed in military exercises. What's required is teamwork, the smooth interaction of men, arms and weapon systems. Here, US Black Hawk and Chinook helicopters are landing Dutch and American forces. One of the jobs of the maneuver umpires is to judge how well each unit executes its part of the exercise. For guests and observers, these maneuvers are also of political importance to show the deterrent potential of the combined armed forces. Contacts, communication, cooperation form the essence of the exercise. Only the swift and uninterrupted flow of information can ensure the effective operation of a multinational force.
That Green starts a mass attack, especially in the western sector, is still far from the FIBA. The first combat contact was...
This is the nerve center of the exercise, the maneuver control center. Whatever goes on out on the field is reported by radio and telephone. All troop movements are shown with small tags and arrows. Here, one can get an idea of the complex organization necessary for such an exercise. A labyrinth of offices and control points. The ever-changing combat situation is shown on the wall maps. In the center, operation staffs of the attacking and defending forces work day and night. TV monitors displaying troop movements charted on maps relay the information to various command posts in the center. However, modern communication systems can't overcome all language barriers. But one can always fall back on that most international of all languages, sign language. The C-141 Starlifter, the workhorse linking America with Europe, is used each year at the beginning of the autumn exercises. These GIs have flown 12 hours from Fort Hood, Texas, to take part in the multinational maneuvers. Reforge, as this operation is known, ensures the rapid reinforcement by the United States of NATO forces in Germany, and is an integral part of NATO policy. Heavy weapons and equipment for these troops are permanently stored in Western Europe. This material is then transported by ship and rail to the exercise area. Troops flown in pick up their equipment straight from ordnance depots. The airlifting of American troops to Germany is vital in times of crisis, when there wouldn't be enough time to transport men and materials across the Atlantic by ship. Equipment for the airlift forces is stored in the Federal Republic, the Netherlands, and in Belgium. $4 billion worth of material, enough to equip 4 divisions of 60,000 men. These troops would serve as the essential reinforcement to the 250,000 US soldiers already stationed in the Federal Republic. More than 8,000 soldiers were flown in from the US to take part in Exercise Atlantic Lion. The principal area for this large-scale exercise, involving more than 40,000 troops, was Emsland and Münsterland in northern Germany. At the border, the usual frontier formalities were of course dispensed with. The Dutch army had overall command of this exercise, and they also contributed the largest single contingent, 25,000 men. The German Bundeswehr provided 10,000, and British forces accounted for a further 600. In Central Europe, there are many major rivers, which present obstacles to the transportation of men and heavy equipment. This means in all large military maneuvers, troops rehearse laying bridges to ferry heavy tanks and trucks quickly and safely across rivers. Once the troops have been deployed and equipment assembled, communication systems must be set up. Telephone and telex provide the vital links.
I have a call for you on line 73. Go ahead, sir.
This is operator Apollo. You want to have Capricorn?
Centraal Apollo.
Capricorn, I connect.
Centraal Apollo hier. Ja.
This is the operational headquarters of the 1st U.S. Cavalry Division. These men from Texas belong to a division with a long and proud tradition, which began with defending American settlers as they moved westwards and later took them into World War II, Korea and Vietnam. Coordinating units under difficult conditions is a job they do best. Ground reconnaissance for the various units is provided by the German forces because they're totally familiar with the terrain. The main German contribution to the combat troops was provided by the 8th Panzer Brigade from Lüneburg.
Über diese Ortschaft Coesfeld weiter gen Norden entweder auf F2 oder auf November 1-2 aus.
The German anti-tank helicopter pilots are briefed on the job to be done. This occurs in various places hundreds of times a day. The success of any exercise depends on such careful preparation and organization.
Feindlage. Feind greift auf gesamter Breite der Brigade 42 an. Im linken Teil vor Panzerbataillon 3. Hat die Situation voll im Griff. An der rechten Flanke bei Bataillon 45 sind hier, wie ich zeige, Rückenteile gesichtet worden und somit erwarten wir dort gepanzerten Feind.
Letters home. Even during maneuvers, the troops can still send and receive mail. As every soldier knows, the supply units are the backbone of the army. In multinational maneuvers like these, food supplies are a national responsibility. Each unit prepares its own food. Naturally, some are curious to know what the others get to eat. The supplies must be there on time. Otherwise there'll be long faces, because, as soldiers say, no bite, no fight. Highly efficient organization is needed to feed 40,000 men for 9 days, and maneuvers make you hungry. In this exercise, for example, 1,000 kilos of sausage were consumed, along with 2,400 kilos of cheese, 25,000 loaves of bread, and 1,400 kilos of coffee. Supplies for men and equipment of different nations is centrally controlled, like everything else in such a large-scale exercise. Here, it's handled by the Dutch. Fuel for the track and wheel vehicles is delivered to the front-line troops in jerry cans. This fuel can be used in the vehicles of all NATO nations. Here, a German maintenance unit is replacing the engine of a Dutch Leopard tank. The operation takes less than half an hour and is a prime example of interoperability of NATO forces. In every big military exercise, of course, there have to be facilities for the care and transportation of the wounded. This field hospital near Coesfeld was set up by a US Army group in less than 24 hours and features a modern operating theatre, X-ray unit and laboratory.
Here we go, we have an X-ray here of that gentleman lying on the table. Careful.
The field hospital can handle everything, from acute emergencies to small injuries suffered during the exercise. The medical orderlies had a quiet time. Few of the 1,200 beds had to be used during this exercise. Contrary to what this sign says, this is not a holiday down on the farm, but a breather during manoeuvres is just as welcome. At the height of the exercise, soldiers sometimes have to go without sleep for 24 hours, so they're grateful for even a few minutes of rest. During a lull in the exercise, soldiers chat with the local people, who are naturally curious to know what's going on and learn a bit about the purpose of such manoeuvres.
Good cracker.
Fully dry. You need a beer.
There's also time for contact between the soldiers of the various nations. Getting to know each other helps build bridges. NATO forces are striving to standardize equipment. In the meantime, it's important to know something about the weapons used by one's allies.
Put a grenade in there, and you shoot it down, push it down, and here's the trigger.
Tanks leave tracks across the fields, but that's unavoidable. Military orders take priority. But the maneuver troops do all they can to keep damage to a minimum. Each of the NATO forces has its own special unit to record maneuver damage and to provide for immediate repairs or compensation. Soldiers are just as sensitive to the need for environmental protection as their fellow citizens, no matter what country they come from. Here, a German farmer reports what's happened to his land to a Dutch damage control unit.
Tomorrow we have another operation that will start at 0500 Zulu.
In all maneuvers, safety takes priority.
This particular operation. But I'm very pleased with your cooperation.
German local police, Dutch military police, along with Bundeswehr and American military police. Another example of multinational cooperation in NATO maneuvers. To reach the exercise areas, tanks and trucks must use public roads. For this reason, traffic safety is a prime concern during the exercise, to ensure the protection of the civilian population living in the area. Another example of multinational goodwill American bandsmen serenading a royal guest. Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate the gesture. Very, very kind of you. Thank you so much.
Ma'am, please, I'd just like you to meet and shake hands with a few...
Supreme Allied Commander Europe, General Bernard Rogers, declared that the annual autumn manoeuvres served to strengthen the ability of NATO's forces to react with flexibility to any aggression. The highlight of all large-scale manoeuvres is the moment when the tide begins to turn, when the defenders lead their decisive counterattack. Unlike the Warsaw Pact forces, which are trained for attack and invasion, NATO troops are trained principally for containment and defence. Though no real firings actually take place, blanks and smoke often suffice to create a combat situation. For the layman, such exercises are perhaps somewhat confusing. One sees tanks, soldiers and aircraft in action, but there seems to be no order to the activity. But the expert knows that every such exercise represents a carefully planned operation involving thousands of man-hours and months of preparation. Elsewhere, the initiative of the individual soldier is continually put to the test. Here, we've only been able to give a few impressions of a large multinational exercise. An exercise in which everything, even those unseen factors, must be accurately dovetailed to create an effective fighting force. For example, the difficulties facing the commanding officer of an American division to which a Dutch brigade and a British regiment have been assigned. The smoke disperses, the battle is over, the manoeuvres are completed. To translate the ideal of a multinational force into the reality of an effective defence mechanism involves the commitment of thousands of men and women. Each year, under the Autumn Reforge umbrella, about 25 large and small exercises such as this are held by the participating NATO members, from Norway in the north to Turkey in the south. And they all end up the same way, with the great clean-up. The traces can still be seen in the fields, but nature will soon obliterate them. The soldiers have long since returned to their barracks, having done their duty. We must test the effectiveness of our armed forces in peacetime to make sure they'll be capable of defending us in the case of a real emergency that we hope will never come.